Chapter 113. The so-called war slaves were slaves that had been captured during the war. These people were tyrannical in strength and their bodies were strong. After being controlled by the Blackfield, they were absolutely loyal to their masters. They were very welcomed by those who entered the Blackfield. If Luo Qingtong hadn't come at the right time, the powerhouses in this group might have already been bought. A group of figures lined up in front of Luo Qingtong. There were nearly 100 people. Most of them were great generals and only a few were martial marquis level. Luo Qingtong looked at these people with extraordinary auras, but at this moment, their faces were numb and they had been reduced to slaves. She narrowed her eyes. These people, before becoming slaves, were all upper-class people of their own countries. These martial marquis powerhouses, which one of them wasn't the same as Grandfather Luo. They were the rulers of their respective countries. Or they were the martial arts geniuses of their respective families. But because of the war, because of the destruction of their countries, these once proud sons of heaven had been reduced to slaves, unable to escape the control of their masters for the rest of their lives. Life and death, they were all in the hands of their masters. Luo Qingtong looked at these people and inexplicably thought of the Luo family and Grandfather Luo. In the true Spill continent, the strong were respected. Countries stood in great numbers and battles were frequent. The expansion of the territory represented the expansion of the territory, and it also represented the increase of resources. Therefore, as long as a country or an aristocratic family lost power, there would immediately be a pack of hungry wolves attacking them, tearing them apart and swallowing them into their stomachs. For so many years, it wasn't that no one had the idea of attacking the Eastern Fence country and the Luo family, but because of the engagement between Luo Qingtong and UNMO, they didn't dare to act rashly. Once the Luo family and the royal family of the Tianyu Empire broke off the engagement, then there would be so many evil people who wanted to attack them. But, as long as she was here, she would never let the Luo family fall into such a situation. Whoever dared to attack the Luo family and Grandfather Luo, she would kill them. Even the Heavenly Emperor was no exception. Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes as she sized up these people. Her gaze swept across the group of martial marquis experts standing at the very front. Suddenly she met with a pair of unruly eyes. He had clearly been reduced to a slave. Even the peak martial marquis had a numb expression on his face. The man standing in the middle of the group, whose strength was only at the intermediate martial marquis level, stood perfectly straight. His pair of beautiful and somewhat feminine phoenix eyes coldly looked at Luo Qingtong. That pair of eyes contained too many things. There was unyieldingness, there was forbearance, and the most obvious was the arrogance. Luo Qingtong looked at the other party's eyes and thought of the lone wolf she had met in the Gobi Desert. His legs were broken, his teeth were ground out, and his eyes were blinded. However, he still fought with his mouth wide open until the last moment and killed the lion opposite him. Even if he had to die, he couldn't lose his dignity. A person with such eyes would definitely achieve great things in the future. Unfortunately, he was now a slave. Slaves didn't have any room for advancement. Their consciousness had already been locked down by the Blackfield's special method of control. They couldn't disobey their master's orders, and they couldn't break free from the shackles to advance. This was to prevent them from becoming too strong in the future, breaking free from the slave imprint's control and hurting their master. The person who bought the slave only wanted an obedient dog. But now this person, even in such a situation, was unwilling to admit defeat. Interesting. Chapter 114. I want all of these people. As she spoke, she walked in front of the man and lifted his chin. What's your name? The man looked straight at the sinister Rakshasa mask on her face without the slightest bit of fear. On that feminine and somewhat overly beautiful face, there was an untamed look that was similar to the look in his eyes. Ziyu? What a nice name. I like you. From now on you can stay by my side and serve me. As Luo Qingtong spoke, her lips moved slightly, and a faintly discernible voice drilled into the man's ears. I know your identity. My name is Evil Eye. Remember it. From now on, I am your master. Luo Qingtong used her own voice to say these two sentences. As she spoke, she cut off the chains that bound the man's hands and feet. Lord Evil Doctor. The people in the slave market were caught off guard. This Suyu was the only troublemaker in this batch of goods. He was extremely untamed. They were just about to give Luo Qingtong some advice, But they didn't expect her to take a fancy to Su Yu and promote him to be her personal servant. But they hadn't handed over the control of the slaves to Lord Evil Doctor yet. What if this Su Yu attacked her? The other party had already injured several trainers when he came here. He was completely out of control. A group of people quickly rushed forward to protect Luo Qingtong. At this moment Su Yu moved. Then everyone watched in surprise as he knelt on the ground. Su Yu obeys Master's orders. From now on, I am Master's man in life and Master's ghost in death. The man knelt on the ground. The untamed look in his eyes was still there, but the subservience in them was genuine. No one had expected this to happen. Su Yu had submitted? He was famous for being difficult to deal with. Previously they wanted to tell Luo Qingtong that if she bought these people back, this Su Yu would be used as cannon fodder to break through enemy lines. He definitely couldn't keep it by his side. Otherwise, even with the control of the slave imprint, the other party would not be so obedient. Who would have thought that Luo Qingtong would just casually say a few words and he would submit? Everyone was surprised, but Luo Qingtong didn't care. She looked indifferently at Su Yu, who was kneeling in front of her, and said, "Remember your choice. I won't accept betrayal." Su Yu will not betray Master. The man kneeling on the ground said in a deep voice. Well then, get up and stand behind me. Yes. Su Yu stood up and stood behind Luo Qingtong expressionlessly. From the beginning to the end, there was not a single superfluous word. Luo Qingtong was very satisfied. Coming to the slave market was the right choice. She didn't look at Su Yu again. Instead she picked up another slave. This time Luo Qingtong wanted to change all the people in her residence, so she bought close to 1,000 slaves from all sorts of places. In addition to a small number of handymen, she also bought about 500 general-level slaves in addition to Su Yu and the others. After buying these slaves, the money that Luo Qingtong won from the bloody arena was reduced by half. More than half of it was spent on Su Yu and the other high-level slaves. The money spent by the others was not as much as the Marshal Marquis level slaves. Luo Qingtong couldn't help but sigh. Buying and selling slaves, especially high-level slaves, was really a money-burning and profiteering industry. Okay, take it off. Chapter 115. Su Yu stood straight and firm in the room. His back was as straight as a javelin, full of the coldness of a soldier. Even his unbelievably beautiful face was as sharp as an unsheathed sword. Hearing Luo Qingtong's words, he was silent for a moment. Then he knelt down in front of Luo Qingtong. Swish. Su Yu raised his hand to untie his hair, and at the same time he pulled off the outer robe he was wearing. Master's perceptive. Su Yu is a girl. His long black hair fluttered down like a waterfall, and Su Yu's beautiful chest bulged with white cloth wrapped around it appeared in front of Luo Qingtong. The half-kneeling girl's clothes were half taken off, exposing her upper body. The lines of her muscles were extremely beautiful, firm and powerful but not bulky. That feminine and beautiful face was full of determination and arrogance. If it weren't for the bulge in front of her chest, no one would believe that she was a girl. Master, when did you find out? Su Yu's mood was complicated. She didn't know where she exposed herself. She had been disguised as a man for more than 10 years, and she had always been the face and pride of the Su family. No one had ever seen through her disguise. Even when she was sold as a slave, it was no exception. If Luo Qingtong hadn't seen through her identity, she wouldn't have surrendered so easily. She just didn't know how her master saw through her identity. You don't need to know this. Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes at her. You only need to know that from now on, I am your only master. If she hadn't found out that Su Yu was a girl, Luo Qingtong wouldn't have been so interested in her. A girl who wasn't willing to admit defeat in a pack of wolves. A girl who was sold as a slave, but still cleverly kept herself and her secrets. Luo Qingtong appreciated her very much. It just so happened that she lacked a personal attendant. She really liked people like Su Yu who had wolf-like eyes and a persistent spirit. Because such a person wouldn't ask too much, wouldn't think too much, and wouldn't do unnecessary things. At the critical moment she would be the sharpest knife in his hand. Usually she was the least talkative guard. Most importantly, the other party's attire was compatible with both men and women. It was very suitable for him to stay by her side. Luo Qingtong didn't need people with high discernment around her. Su Yu met the requirements of the people around her very well. You will follow me from now on. Come here. Luo Qingtong extended her hand to Su Yu. The latter hesitated for a moment before stepping forward. At this moment she felt a buzzing sound in her mind. Amidst the intense pain, it was as if something had been shattered. Master! Su Yu's eyes suddenly widened. She could sense that the thing that was crushed was the control imprint in their minds under the Blackfield slave market. Master, she shattered the slave imprint in her mind. Why was that? Su Yu looked at Luo Qingtong in shock. Master, don't ask why. I just don't like the life and death of my people being in the hands of others. Blackfield had said that they would hand over control, but who knew if there were any hidden hands behind their backs? The Blackfield slave trade was spread throughout the entire True Spill continent. Every country had slaves produced by the Blackfield. If these people could be controlled by the Blackfield, then it would be a big joke. Luo Qingtong didn't dare to underestimate the huge dark sanctuary. She shattered the slave imprint in Su Yu's mind because she didn't want to leave behind any future troubles. She never trusted anyone no matter the means. Chapter 116. That's enough. You'll stay by my side from now on. Luo Qingtong's voice is indifferent. I don't care what your previous identity is, or what kind of hatred and background you have. But there's only one requirement for you to stay by my side. You'll be under my command and everything will be under my command and will. In the future, when your cultivation is strong enough, you can take revenge on your own. I won't stop you. But you're not allowed to have any selfish motives by my side. Can you do it? Luo Qingtong looks at her indifferently. The blood-red light in her eyes flickers little by little. If Su Yu answers with a single word, then her end today will be very miserable. But Luo Qingtong believes that the other party won't make such a choice. This is a clever wolf-like woman. She has the unruliness of a wolf, but also the wisdom and intelligence of a wolf. Su Yu's everything belongs to Master. Please rest assured, Master. Su Yu kneels down. She has regained her freedom, so she should have left at all costs. But the girl in front of her gave her dignity and freedom, and broke the shackles of being a slave. Su Yu isn't someone who doesn't know how to repay kindness. She can also become strong by the girl's side. He can also take revenge. She's willing to offer her life and soul, just for the new life that the other party has given her. Very good. Luo Qingtong nods indifferently. The other party has indeed made a good choice. In the future you'll be in charge of everything around me. After those people from the slave market are sent here, you'll organize them into teams and patrol the residents. Oh, I'll give you a map. For the time being, you'll patrol according to the route on this map. When Luo Qingtong says this, it's unknown what she's thinking, but the corners of her lips curl up. That smile is really evil and wanton. If Xianxia were here at this moment, he would definitely be vigilant in an instant. Because every time this woman tricked him, she would always smile like this. Su Yu quickly took over the defense of the entire residence. Luo Qingtong's authority over her is very relaxed. Su Yu didn't need to consult her about almost everything. She only needed to make a decision and then report it to her. Don't use people you don't suspect. Luo Qingtong wasn't afraid of Su Yu betraying her. She was confident that she could control everything when Su Yu betrayed her. Only the weak would be afraid of being overridden and deceived. The strong would always control everything in their hands. Su Yu was also very worthy of Luo Qingtong's trust. She took good care of her mansion. She used to be in charge of an army, and those battle slaves were arranged in an extremely orderly manner in her hands. Very soon they began to patrol. However, those who were ordered to monitor Luo Qingtong suffered. The route drawn by Luo Qingtong was targeted at them. Ever since Su Yu had arranged for people to patrol the residence, the people who came to monitor Luo Qingtong had been chased away like chickens and dogs. There was no other way. Those people were running towards where they were hiding. Originally, they thought that their identities had been exposed. But when they took a closer look, those guards were just patrolling and passing by where they were hiding. There was no other way. Those people began to change locations. This won't do. They were scared witless every time. But speaking of which, it was also strange. When they changed locations, those guards also changed their patrol routes. Every time, there would always be a few routes that coincided with where they were hiding. Gradually, those who were in charge of monitoring Luo Qingtong were made to complain incessantly, but there was nothing they could do. On this day, Luo Qingtong stood in the room watching those people in a state of chaos in the dark. She suddenly smiled and looked at Su Yu, who was standing beside her. Chapter 117. Yes. It's the heaven and earth dragon soul herb that you need. The person sent by the bloody arena said that the other party wants to see you. He said that he will only take out the heaven and earth dragon soul herb after seeing you. Su Yu's voice was cold and clear. It was very pleasant to listen to. Coupled with his firm and indifferent expression at the moment, he really looked like a handsome young master. He was beautiful, feminine, and heroic. Looking at him made people want to touch him. Unfortunately, this handsome and indifferent man was a woman. Luo Qingtong looked at him and shook her head. If this was known by others, it would break the hearts of many young girls. She suddenly thought of something and asked, Su Yu, have any girls pursued you before? Su Yu's voice suddenly stopped. Then he helplessly raised his head and said to Luo Qingtong, Master, I'm talking business with you. So, can't you be a bit more serious? Su Yu also didn't understand his master. He thought that the other party's character was evil and cold and would be very difficult to serve. But in fact, when he really got along with her, Su Yu realized that Luo Qingtong's temperament was very changeable. Although she did things her own way, it was very easy to get along with her. In just a few days, the master and servant could already make some harmless jokes. Okay. Luo Qingtong folded her fingers and tapped them. The other party wants to see me, right? Tell the people of the bloody arena that I will go there. Heaven and Earth Dragon Soul Herb. It was one of the antidote herbs that Luo Qingtong needed. The antidote herbs she needed were mixed in the list she gave to the bloody arena. If it was other herbs, Luo Qingtong would refuse. But since it was this herb, Luo Qingtong had to go there in person. After all, this was the first herb she found that could detoxify the poison in her eyes. Maybe she could find other herbs through the other party. To be honest, after coming to the Black Field, Luo Qingtong knew how precious the antidote herbs she was looking for were. In the whole Black Field there were so many cities, but she still couldn't find the antidote herbs she needed for so long. She had collected a lot of other herbs. But for Luo Qingtong those were just tricks. They were useless. The antidote couldn't be taken out by ordinary people. Ordinary antidotes and antidotes were very difficult to detoxify. However, the herbs used in the poison that she was afflicted with were incomparably precious. There was someone behind the royal family of Tianyu. Interesting. He thought that it was just a simple plot by a concubine's daughter who was jealous of the first wife's daughter. It would be enough if the royal family of Tianyu was involved. The person who took out the ultimate medicine and ultimate poison must have a very honorable status. Otherwise, they wouldn't have used so many precious medicinal ingredients on top of the ultimate medicine and ultimate poison. But it didn't matter. She had plenty of time. And one by one. Let's go. Luo Qingtong put on her cloak and ferocious Rakshasa mask and went out. Since she subdued Su Yu, Luo Qingtong was a lot more relaxed. Occasionally she would show her real face in the room to let her skin breathe. Anyway, if someone broke in according to Luo Qingtong's arrangement, there would be a warning. Luo Qingtong had enough time to react. Yes. Su Yu responded and followed her with a straight posture. Chapter 118. In the VIP room of the bloody battle arena, an old man was standing with his hands behind his back, waiting for Luo Qingtong's arrival. Suddenly he seemed to have sensed something. He raised his head to look somewhere in the air and smiled. Mingzun. If someone else was here, they would be shocked to find that the old man's attitude was very casual. He did not seem to be afraid of the Blackfield's supreme ruler. Obviously he was an expert on the same level as Mingzun. You can't touch him. Xianxia's voice came from the other side of the air. This was clearly an extremely advanced sound transmission technique. His figure didn't even appear here. Oh, that evil doctor? The old man's voice was surprised. He did not expect Mingzun to send a sound transmission just to warn him not to touch the evil doctor. He's from the Black Field. Xianxia's voice was cold. He did not touch the evil doctor. Naturally, he would not allow anyone to touch him. After all, that was the only clue he had that could lead him to that woman. My lord, you've misunderstood. The old man smiled warmly. After that moment of surprise, his expression returned to normal. I'm here to see what kind of person the evil doctor is. He doesn't know anything about alchemy, but he can enter the pinnacle state and refine the supreme-grade medicinal liquid. He smiled. I won't find trouble with him. It's just that I can't help but feel itchy when I see such a genius. Xianxia did not say anything else. The intimidating aura in the air retreated. Interesting. I didn't expect Ming Zun to value that evil doctor so much. Makes me even more curious. The old man smiled and talked to himself in the quiet room. He was looking forward to Luo Qingtong's arrival. No one had ever attracted Ming Zun's attention. This evil doctor was quite capable. The capable Lord Evil Doctor Luo Qingtong pushed the door open and walked in at this moment. As soon as she entered, she saw the old man standing in the middle looking at her meaningfully. Luo Qingtong had goosebumps all over her body. The old man's gaze was too strange. The meaning of, I'm interested in you, was too strong. Could he be an old homosexual? She likes me? Luo Qingtong got goosebumps as she thought about it. She wanted to leave the heaven and earth dragon soul herb behind and leave immediately. Fortunately, the old man spoke up in time and broke the misunderstanding. You are the evil doctor? This old man has seen the profound origin heart elixir that you refined. You are not an alchemist, yet you are able to enter the extreme realm and refine such a transcendent medicinal elixir. This is truly amazing. He did not mention anything about Underworld Venerable. Since Underworld Venerable chose to speak to him in a place where no one was around, he naturally did not want others to know about it. Since that was the case, there was no need for him to say anything more. Luo Qingtong breathed a sigh of relief. It turned out that he had seen through the mysteries of her alchemy technique. It was fine as long as he wasn't a homosexual. You flatter me. May I know the reason for your visit this time? As soon as Luo Qingtong's voice came out, the old man was instantly shocked. Then he looked at her even more meaningfully. It is said that the evil doctor's medical skills are extraordinary. I wonder if you can cure my injuries? He clasped his hands behind his back and looked at Luo Qingtong. If you can, this old man will give you the heaven and earth dragon soul herb with both hands. The old man's face was full of excitement. He did not look like he was here to ask for treatment. Instead, he looked like he was here to test Luo Qingtong. Luo Qingtong looked at his expression and the corners of her mouth twitched. Why was this old man behaving so strangely? But she did not care about this. She heard that as long as she cured his injuries, she could get the heaven and earth dragon soul herb. She immediately used her pupil technique to look at him. After looking at him, Luo Qingtong turned around and left. Chapter 119. Hey, little girl. Wait a minute. Seeing Luo Qingtong turn around and leave so quickly, the old man was caught off guard. The old man was caught off guard and hurriedly shouted. In a flash, he stood in front of her. You haven't checked my injuries yet. Just say you can't cure it. How could there be such a thing? No need. I can't cure it. Luo Qingtong said firmly. This old man was making fun of her. There were several violent and ferocious forces in his body, which were extremely destructive. They were wandering around in his meridians and bones. He had to rely on his own strength to suppress them. Although Luo Qingtong couldn't tell what level of strength the force belonged to, she could tell that it was not something an ordinary person could touch. If someone who wasn't strong enough touched it, he or she might be blown up into nothingness. In short, this old man was not an ordinary expert. The injuries on his body were not caused by ordinary people. How could Luo Qingtong cure it? It was not that she couldn't cure it, but she couldn't cure it now. The strength in her body was not enough. To cure the old man's injuries, she had to expose the secret of her pupil technique. Moreover, she needed several experts who were as strong as this old man to assist her. She had to go through so much trouble for a heaven and earth dragon soul herb. She even exposed her biggest secret in front of others. She was not stupid. Therefore, after taking a look at the old man's injuries, Luo Qingtong firmly replied that she couldn't cure it. No. You didn't check the injuries and said you couldn't cure it. I can't accept it. How could the old man stand Luo Qingtong like this? He wanted to give Luo Qingtong a good test. But he didn't expect her to do this to him. Who said I didn't check it? Seeing that he kept stopping her, Luo Qingtong frowned. She didn't want to be entangled with him anymore. She didn't need to expose her pupil technique. She still had a way to make the old man retreat. Your breath is deep and there is a sound of thunder mixed with some noise. It can be seen that the breath in your body is intertwined with a tyrannical force. Look at your palm again. Luo Qingtong pointed at his hand that was blocking her. Fingernails are greenish-black with a straight line upwards. Her skin was fair and loose. Can be seen that you usually take good care of your health. You are vigorous and full of energy. You protect and strengthen your body. However, he suffered a serious injury and suffered a powerful backlash. Now he is completely relying on his own strength to suppress it. That's why your palms and skin look so old. If I'm not mistaken. Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows. You were at least 10 times younger than you are now? The old man's beard trembled. Luo Qingtong's every word was hammered into his heart. She had actually said it without missing a single word. It turned out that she wasn't just saying it casually. She really could tell that she couldn't treat his injuries. The old man looked surprised. Before he came, he had heard about how miraculous the evil doctor in the black field was. A bottle of medicine was able to bring the dead back to life and save a person who was bound to die. At that time, he didn't take it to heart because he had seen the medicine. It just happened to treat the other party's fatal injuries. It wasn't as mystical as the rumors said, that it could bring the dead back to life. But because of this, it had piqued his interest and he had specially come to see this evil doctor. He didn't expect that the other party's medical skills would be so beyond his expectations. Just by looking at him, he was able to tell how serious his internal injuries were from his external appearance. Chapter 120. He was already looking at Luo Qingtong in a new light because of Ming Zun's protection. Now that he saw her outstanding medical skills, he was even more excited. Good, good, good. He looked at Luo Qingtong with a face full of joy and smiles. Good, little doll. I didn't expect your medical skills to be so good. You're right. My internal injuries are very serious and you can't cure it. His "you can't cure it" was different from Luo Qingtong's "I can't cure it." The old man thought she couldn't cure it. But Luo Qingtong knew that she could cure it. But if she wanted to cure it now, she would have to expose her eye technique ability and expose herself in front of everyone. She would never do such a thing. When her ability was exposed in her previous life, it attracted many people who wanted to kill her. She finally had a stable life in this life. She was determined not to expose it. Let the other party think she couldn't cure it. Yes. I said I can't cure it. Luo Qingtong said and was about to walk out. Wait. The old man stopped her and threw a brocade box to her. He laughed and said, although you can't cure it, it's not your fault. I'm not someone who bullies little doll. This heaven and earth dragon soul grass is for you. Yes. There's another thing I want to give you in it. I hope you can make good use of it. Little doll, the world outside is very big. Your talent is so good, don't waste it. He said meaningfully and walked out with a smile while stroking his beard. This is so strange. Luo Qingtong was depressed. She looked at the brocade box in her hand. Obviously, it contained the heaven and earth dragon soul grass. But why did the old man give it to her? Just because she mentioned his injuries? Luo Qingtong frowned and couldn't figure it out. This old man had been acting weird since she came in, and he even called her a little doll. Wait. Luo Qingtong's body stiffened in an instant. Did that old man see through her identity? Damn. Luckily there was no one around. Luo Qingtong glanced around the room and used her Do technique to make sure that no one else had heard her conversation with the old man. Only then did she breathe a sigh of relief. It was not that she was nervous, but that man, the man she had offended in the 9 Magi Mountains, was also in the Blackfield subcity. Fortunately, there was no one else around when he met with the old man. Otherwise, his identity would have been exposed. This meeting was so secretive and short. No matter how resourceful that man was, he wouldn't know, right? Thinking of this, she calmed down. It would be terrible if that man found out. Luo Qingtong absolutely did not want to be caught by him. Although the other party's target was Little Pig was her lifeline. Luo Qingtong would never give it to him. As for himself, he had offended him so many times before. If he was caught, he wouldn't have a good time either. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong walked out of the VIP room with palpitations. What she didn't know was that several thousand meters away in the city lord's mansion, with a snap, Yi Qianren, who had been paying attention to the movements in the private room, crushed the Taotai paperweight in her hand. Little doll. Supreme Blackfield's face was dark and gloomy. Every word he spat out was filled with unspeakable coldness. That demonic doctor wasn't an old man at all. Was he that woman's disguise to deceive him? Thinking that he might have been deceived again, Xianxia's heart burned with anger. Pass down the Supreme's order. Invite the demonic doctor into the mansion. Chapter 121. In the bloody arena, Luo Qingtong exits the VIP room and leaves with Su Yu, who is waiting for her outside the door. Just as the two of them reach the entrance, a black shadow suddenly pounces over from the side. Lord Demonic Doctor. Be careful, Master. Su Yu suddenly raises her eyes and blocks in front of Luo Qingtong. She raises her hand and slashes at the pouncing figure. Wait. Luo Qingtong finds the voice a bit familiar and calls out to stop her. Soon after, the figure pounces in front of her. Lord Demonic Doctor, please save my mother. I beg you. The figure is tall and sturdy. At this moment he is kneeling in front of her. The big guy is curled up like a shrimp and desperately kowtows to her. Luo Qingtong looks at him and frowns. Chu Lingfeng? Luo Qingtong recognizes the other party. Isn't this the blockhead that she saved in order to make a name for herself in the bloody arena? Save his mother? Isn't his mother dead? Asking her to save a dead person? If she didn't know that this Chu Lingfeng is a little silly, Luo Qingtong would have thought that the other party is here to ruin her reputation. I can't save the dead. You can go. Luo Qingtong takes Su Yu and prepares to go around Chu Lingfeng. She is a demonic doctor, not an immortal. What's more, even an immortal can't save a person who has been dead for several days. This Chu Lingfeng really knows how to find trouble for himself. When Luo Qingtong entered the bloody arena, she saw this blockhead kneeling on the side and falling asleep. She doesn't know how long he has been kneeling with his body covered in dust. She didn't expect that he was waiting for her. However, the dead can't be saved. It's useless even if he kneels to death here. No. Lord Demonic Doctor. My mother is not dead. He is still alive. They are all talking nonsense. My mother is still sitting beside me and smiling at me. She's not dead. Seeing that Luo Qingtong was about to leave, Chu Lingfeng took a few steps forward on his knees and hugged her leg. He said incoherently, Lord Evil Doctor, I know you are a good person. I was about to die in the arena and you saved me. The people in the arena treated me very well and gave me a lot of good things. I know it's all because of you. Can you save my mother? She was really dying. Her figure was already very, very faint. Lord Evil Doctor, if you save my mother, I'll sell myself to you. I'm very powerful. I don't need to eat so much, but I can do a lot of work. Otherwise, if you sell me to the fighting arena, I'll definitely be very, very serious. I'm not afraid of pain. You can break a few of my bones and I'll fight you no matter how heavy the injuries are. I can make you a lot of money. As long as you save my mom. Lord Evil Doctor, I beg you. I beg you. You have to save her. Such a big guy was hugging Luo Qingtong's thigh and crying like a child. He looked silly and pitiful, like a big dog that had been abandoned by its owner. Su Yu couldn't bear to see him like this. She also knew a little about Luo Qingtong's fame. She knew that this big fool was about to be beaten to death at that time, and it was her master who saved him. So he was seriously injured in the arena to fight for others and earn money to treat her mother's illness? Although he was a fool, he was also a filial son. Master. Su Yu looked at Luo Qingtong. Although the dead couldn't be saved, it wasn't a big deal for her master to take a look. Right, go take a look. Luo Qingtong wasn't moved by Su Yu's words, but Chu Lingfeng's words made her a little interested. She wasn't dead. Her figure was becoming more and more transparent. The situation. Chapter 122. Master. This is the place. After receiving Luo Qingtong's approval, Chu Lingfeng was overjoyed. He automatically followed Su Yu and called her master. No matter how she corrected him, he wouldn't listen. In his opinion, since Luo Qingtong agreed to save his mother, he was her person. Luo Qingtong's lips twitched when she heard this. Why did these words sound so ambiguous? However, although this blockhead was a bit stupid, he was loyal and pure. Luo Qingtong didn't mind keeping him by her side. Moreover, this blockhead wasn't completely useless. Luo Qingtong discovered that Chu Lingfeng's recovery ability was very amazing. She had just pulled him back from the brink of death a few days ago. It had only been a few days, but he was already alive and kicking. The huge wound on his abdomen had healed without leaving a scar. Luo Qingtong had never seen anyone with such a strong recovery ability. With some nurturing in the future, it wasn't impossible for him to become a capable person. The group of people walked into a dilapidated room. Inside there were only 4 bare walls. Apart from a bed made of wooden planks, there was only a tattered straw mat. Chu Lingfeng cheerfully rushed into the room like a big dog. He happily shouted, "Mother! Mother! I brought Master to see you. You'll be fine. You'll definitely get better." Chu Lingfeng was in high spirits. Su Yu, who was behind him, frowned. She could naturally feel that apart from the 3 of them, there was no one else in the room. The middle-aged woman on the wooden plank bed in front of them was indeed dead. "Blockhead, your mother is already dead." Before she came, she thought that Chu Lingfeng's mother was really, as he said, not dead. But now it seemed that Chu Lingfeng's obsession was too deep and he was hallucinating. Thinking of this, Su Yu sighed. "Nonsense." Chu Lingfeng glared at Su Yu. "My mother didn't die. She's sitting right next to me talking to me. You're not the master. You don't even know how to treat illnesses. How did you know?" As he spoke, he angrily turned his head to look at Luo Qingtong and asked, "Mistress, you can see my mother, right? She's right beside me now. She's not dead yet." Chu Lingfeng regarded Luo Qingtong's words as a precious jade. He believed that his master would definitely be able to see his mother. She must be able to save her mother's life. Chu Lingfeng firmly believed. "Yes, I can see that your mother is not dead yet." Luo Qingtong squinted at Chu Lingfeng's side. Beside him there was a faint, smoke-like shadow. Although the shadow was very faint, one could vaguely see that the outline of the shadow was Chu Lingfeng's mother. This was Chu Lingfeng's mother's soul. This blockhead didn't lie, his mother really wasn't dead yet. But now there was no difference between her and being dead. The soul detachment illness is really rare. Luo Qingtong walked straight over. Chu Lingfeng's mother's soul was unconscious, sitting next to Chu Lingfeng, looking at him with an indescribable love in her eyes. Luo Qingtong only took a glance and knew that the other party was in a very strange state at the moment. She seemed to be dead yet not dead, like a soul yet not a soul, like a ghost yet not a ghost. Luo Qingtong had only seen the introduction of the soul detachment illness in ancient books before, so her interest was piqued. Chapter 123. In Chu Lingfeng's mother's body, there was still a sliver of life. Sure enough, the soul detachment illness was caused by the soul being sucked out of the body due to certain reasons. Although the soul had left the body because the person's life was not meant to end, there would be a sliver of life left in the body. However, this sliver of life was very weak. If the soul of the person with the soul detachment illness did not return to the body in time, this sliver of life would slowly dissipate. Finally, it would completely disappear. Now Chu Lingfeng's mother was in such a situation. The sliver of life in her body was about to disappear completely. Therefore, the shadow of the soul was so faint. However, since Luo Qingtong already knew what was going on, and knew where the sliver of life was in her body, she naturally knew how to treat it. "Give me your hand," she said to Chu Lingfeng. When the man heard this, he immediately stretched out his hand without hesitation. "Master, is one enough? If not, I still have more." Luo Qingtong's lips twitched when she heard this. This blockhead, did he think that he was selling pickled pork knuckles? If one was not enough, then another? Enough. She only wanted some of Chu Lingfeng's blood. Men were yang by nature, especially Chu Lingfeng's body, which was full of yang energy. This kind of blood would be of great use to her next move. While speaking, Luo Qingtong held his hand and drew a line with her finger. In an instant, hot blood splashed out from Chu Lingfeng's wrist. Along with the blood that flew out, Luo Qingtong raised her hand and hurriedly drew a few symbols in the air. Then she suddenly raised her hand. "Quick!" Following her clear shout, those symbols drawn with blood instantly entered the body of Chu Lingfeng's mother. Then Luo Qingtong pushed the soul of his mother forward. The moment it entered the body, she fiercely bit her index finger and pointed at her forehead. Then she quickly drew an extremely complicated and simple rune on her mother's forehead. Set. The moment the talisman was formed, Chu Lingfeng's mother's soul, which was about to be expelled from her body, was quickly pushed back and fixed in her body. In an instant, the lifeless woman lying on the bed regained her breath and heartbeat after Luo Qingtong's actions. His complexion slowly turned rosy. Although it still had a pale greenish-black color, it was still alive. All right. Withdrawing her hand, Luo Qingtong took the handkerchief handed over by Su Yu and wiped her hand. Then she said to Chu Lingfeng, who was dumbfounded, "Your mother is fine now. However, I can't wake up for now. I have to properly recuperate and replenish my soul power." After all, that soul had stayed outside for too long and had suffered too much damage. Yes. I know, Master. Really, thank you so much. Chu Lingfeng was so happy that he didn't know what to do. He circled around Luo Qingtong like a big wolf dog and almost rushed up to kneel and lick her. How could Master be so powerful? She must be a celestial being from the heavens. To be able to save his mother. Chu Lingfeng wasn't completely brainless. His mother's situation, so many people came and said that she was already dead. Even the Earth Stage alchemist in the Blackfield subcity, he had spent a huge amount of money to invite someone to take a look. They all said that there was no hope for his mother. If it wasn't for the fact that he could see his mother by his side, he might have believed those people's words. Only Master. With one look he knew that his mother wasn't dead. Master was the most powerful person in the world. Chapter 124. Su Yu, who was watching from the side, was also shocked. She had seen with her own eyes how Tu Lingfeng's mother had regained her breath. Could it be that Master could really come back from the dead? For a moment Su Yu was also stunned. Luo Qingtong didn't explain to them. Even if she did, they wouldn't understand. For many people, Chu Lingfeng's mother should already be a dead person. But for her, as long as there was still life, then she wasn't considered a dead person. How did your mother become like this? Compared to the shock of the two, Luo Qingtong was more curious about the reason why Chu Lingfeng's mother became like this. One must know that the soul detachment illness wasn't an illness that appeared easily. For Chu Lingfeng's mother to be like this, there must be some external force that sucked out her soul, causing her to become like this. Luo Qingtong was very interested in this so-called external force. I don't know. Chu Lingfeng said very honestly. This blockhead didn't know what was called lying. He scratched his head and said, "When I came back some time ago, I found that my mother had become like this. As for the specific reason, I don't know," he said honestly, "but I heard from Uncle Li next door that my mother fell ill. Not long after she went out with the team of the Chamber of Commerce next door to gather medicinal herbs, she fell ill when she came back. After that she became like this." Gathering medicinal herbs? Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows. Are those medicinal herbs that your mother gathered still there? Oh. Chu Lingfeng scratched his head and said, "Those medicinal herbs were handed over to the Chamber of Commerce." Master, wait. When my mother came back, she was holding something and told me not to touch it. As he spoke, he quickly got up and wandered around the empty room. Then Luo Qingtong and Su Yu saw him pull out a small cloth bag from the corner of the wall like magic. "Mistress, look, this is it." Chu Lingfeng excitedly ran back to Luo Qingtong with the small cloth bag. Luo Qingtong raised her hand and took the small cloth bag. When she opened it, she saw a black object that looked like tree bark. "This thing's aura." Luo Qingtong raised her hand and picked it up. "Master." Su Yu and Chu Lingfeng were shocked. Especially Chu Lingfeng. His mother had said that he must not touch this thing. If Master went to take it like this, would something happen? He was anxious and wanted to snatch the piece of black bark from Luo Qingtong's hand. However, he saw that Luo Qingtong raised her hand and crushed the piece of black bark into powder. "I see." Luo Qingtong's eyes flashed with a bloody light. She had just completely analyzed the black bark-like object with her eye technique. 1,000-year soul guiding wood. It turned out that this was the thing that had sucked out the soul of Chu Lingfeng's mother. It seemed that his mother's life was quite good. Generally, the soul that was sucked out by the 1,000-year soul guiding would be bound around it for eternity, unable to reincarnate. This 1,000-year soul guiding wood could be said to be the most evil thing in the world. However, for Luo Qingtong, this 1,000-year soul guiding wood was a rare good thing. As long as one could suppress its soul-sucking power, this 1,000-year soul guiding wood was an excellent treasure. It had a great effect on a cultivator's comprehension of the realm. Not only that, wearing it on one's body could also naturally nurture the cultivator's soul. There were all kinds of benefits. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong asked Chu Lingfeng about the specific location where his mother gathered the herbs and prepared to leave the city. However, before she could reach the city gate, she was stopped by someone. Chapter 125. In front of her. All of them were martial marquis realm experts, wearing the Blackfield's silver-rimmed uniforms. They stood respectfully in front of Luo Qingtong. Their outstanding momentum and unyielding figure showed their determination to invite Luo Qingtong this time. "My lord." Hearing their words, Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows in thought. "Mingzun? The supreme master of the Blackfield, the peerless expert? Why does he want to invite me? To refine medicine?" Luo Qingtong's mind spun rapidly, but she nodded calmly on the surface. "Okay, lead the way. No matter why he wants to see me, he won't kill me." However, Luo Qingtong didn't know that this was more important than her life. They came to the city master's mansion. Luo Qingtong was led into a magnificent hall by the attendant. "Please wait here. My lord will be here soon." Luo Qingtong nodded and then looked around the hall. This should be the hall where the city master usually discussed matters. But now it was used by Mingzun as a place to rest and receive guests. Luo Qingtong glanced at the high platform in front of her. Suddenly her eyes paused. Through her eyes she saw clearly that there was a stack of albums on the high platform. On the third album that was pressed at the top, there was a picture of a fruit that looked like a jasper. The core of the fruit was heart-shaped. It was crimson inside and covered with a layer of jasper on the outside. Heaven Heart Jasper Fruit. Luo Qingtong's eyes lit up. This was one of the antidotes she was looking for. She had already got a Heaven and Earth Dragon Soul Herb. And this Heaven Heart Jasper Fruit. Then she would have 2 antidotes in her hands. In the future, if she had the opportunity to get medicinal herbs that could replace the medicinal properties, she might be able to detoxify the poison directly. Thinking of this, she began to calculate. If Mingzun had asked her to refine medicine, what were the chances of her asking for this Heaven Heart Green Jade Fruit as the antidote? Just as she was thinking, her eyes suddenly caught a glimpse of a prescription under the stack of diagrams. Could this prescription be the medicine that Mingzun wanted him to refine? Luo Qingtong thinks about it and starts to read it. However, the more she looked, the stranger her expression became. By the end, Luo Qingtong's lips were twitching and she didn't know what to say. Shastraski. This prescription. Wasn't this prescription the prescription for the Xianyuan heart liquid that she had refined? How could Mingzun's table have the prescription for the Xianyuan heart liquid that he had refined himself? And it was so detailed. The required herbs and medicinal properties were exactly the same. In fact, he had even written down the medicinal properties that he had added and the medicinal herbs that he had replaced. How did these underworld venerables know? Other than himself, only that man from Nine Magi Mountain would know about this. Wait a minute. Luo Qingtong's body stiffened instantly. Mingzun. That man from Nine Magi Mountain. He had the same powerful means, the same undetectable power and the same tyrannical power. Damn. Could that man from Nine Magi Mountain be Mingzun? This thought flashed through Luo Qingtong's mind and she was so frightened that her hair stood on end. Oh no, oh no. That man was definitely up to no good. He was disgusted by her just now. Why did he look for her this time? Could he be suspecting her identity again? Chapter 126. Of the 36 stratagems, leaving was the best stratagem. She'd better leave first. While that man hasn't come yet. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong quickly got up and was about to leave. At this moment, a figure exuding an indescribable power stepped in from outside. Where do you think you're going in front of this sovereign? Xianxia's gaze was cold. Luo Qingtong turned around and met his cold gaze hidden behind the dark gold mask. In an instant she was like a prey being targeted by a hunter. A chill ran down her spine. This man was really starting to suspect her. It was different from the time when he came looking for her because of the Xianyuan solution. Luo Qingtong could clearly feel the difference. If at that time Xianxia was only a little suspicious of her identity, then now it was 70 to 80%. Looking at the man's cold and penetrating gaze, as if he was hunting his prey, Luo Qingtong's body stiffened. Where did she get exposed? She was vexed in her heart. Luo Qingtong felt that her ability to disguise herself wasn't bad. Furthermore, when Xianxia was disgusted and left, he had clearly accepted her identity as the evil Dr. Old Man. Why did he suddenly suspect her? Luo Qingtong sifted through the possibilities and finally gritted her teeth as she set her sights on the strange old man she met before. It was that stinky old man who exposed her identity. What do you mean by little baby? This man must have eavesdropped on it. Luo Qingtong thought of this and cursed Yi Qianxian in her heart for being a perverted voyeur. Did he dare to not pay so much attention to her? She thought that he was so disgusted that he wouldn't pay attention to her for a short period of time. She didn't expect his resistance to be so strong. How long has it been? He actually peeped on her again. Simply perverted. Luo Qingtong was depressed. If she had known, she would have been a little more hardcore. She would have made this man so disgusted that he would run away when he saw her. It would have saved him the trouble of thinking about her every day. She had gone too easy on him previously. Luo Qingtong thought for a while and gnashed her teeth. At the same time, Yi Qianxian slowly approached her. He lowered his head. His height of nearly 1.9 meters gave her a huge sense of oppression as he looked down at her from above. What's wrong? Not saying anything? I really want to know what other tricks you can play this time. His voice was cold. Luo Qingtong listened and cursed in her heart. I have a lot of tricks up my sleeve. If you have the ability, suppress your strength to the same level as mine. See how I play until you start doubting your life. However, although she dared to think this way, she didn't dare to say it out loud. The person in front of him was not someone to be trifled with. He had single-handedly created the Black Field, standing on equal footing with the 4 great holy dynasties. The man in front of him, even saying that he could summon the wind and summon the rain, was not enough to describe his valiance. Not to mention the other party's terrifying martial strength. Luo Qingtong thinks it over and over again. She still thinks it's better if she doesn't confess. Haven't you heard of this saying? If you confess, you'll be in jail for a long time. If you resist, you'll be punished severely and go home for the new year. Thinking of the more and more things she did to this man, Luo Qingtong felt that she had to resist to the end. Until the last moment she would not give up struggling. Ha ha. Lord, this old man doesn't know what you're talking about? She closed her eyes and pretended to be ignorant. Chapter 127. Shut up. Hearing her mention that night, Yi Qianxian's expression turned even colder. Thinking about what this person did that night, the veins on his forehead popped, but he quickly suppressed them. It seems like you're going to continue pretending? He said coldly. No, Lord, I really don't know what you're talking about. Luo Qingtong tried her best to make a final struggle as her mind raced. Oh my God. Who could tell her what she should do in this situation? How could she muddle her way through? Yi Qianxian pressed on, forcing Luo Qingtong into a corner, but she still couldn't think of a good idea. At this moment, the man's cold voice sounded. Do you want to take it off yourself, or do you want this lord to take it off for you? This was clearly a statement. It wasn't a question. Luo Qingtong looked at the man's face in front of her and cursed in her heart. What the F***ck? What the F***ck? Was there a difference between the two? She was still going to be exposed. Begging for a third option. Wait a minute. Suddenly Luo Qingtong thought of something. Hidden behind the Rakshasa mask, her eyes suddenly lit up and a blood-red light flashed through them. How could she forget that? There was a way. Lord, actually, this old man is really unbearably vulgar. My face is ugly and I'm as thin as firewood. I'm afraid I'll dirty your eyes. Luo Qingtong talked about this and that in a deadpan manner, pretending that she didn't know anything. Seeing Yi Qianxian's expression turn cold and impatient as he raised his hand to grab her, she suddenly shouted, Wait. I'll take it off. I'll take it off myself. As she spoke, she took off the Rakshasa mask covering her face. At the same time, her eyes flashed and she used the power that Tian Mingzi left in her eyes to temporarily restore her eyes. Whoosh. The mask was taken off. Yi Qianxian's outstretched hand stopped in midair. He frowned as he looked at the face in front of him. In the man's condescending gaze, what was reflected was a devilishly beautiful young man's face. When Luo Qingtong went out this time, she didn't disguise herself as an old man in order to let her skin breathe. How could she have known that the old man she went to see was such a scammer? Her identity was exposed in an instant. Fortunately, she had a backup plan. Otherwise, he would be dead for sure this time. All right. I admit that the High Lord has seen through me. How did the High Lord find out? Luo Qingtong deliberately blinked her eyes and asked Yi Qianxian. In order to see clearly, she even blinked a few more times. Carefully. My eyes are fine. Xianxia ignored her. He stared at her. The young man in front of him was devilishly beautiful. Luo Qingtong's face was originally beautiful. Now that she was dressed as a man, when her eyebrows were raised, it accentuated her imposing manner even more. Coupled with her mixture of male and female, devilishly charming and unrestrained temperament, it made her male disguise even more handsome and enchanting. If Yi Qianren's temperament was noble, elegant, and domineering, then Yi Qianren's temperament was noble, elegant, and overbearing. Luo Qingtong's youthful temperament was enchanting, devilishly charming, and unrestrained. In this world there was a kind of elegance that had nothing to do with gender. When she was a woman, Luo Qingtong could turn all living things upside down and bring disaster to countries and people. When she was a man, she could still turn the world upside down and make countless men and women bow down to her. But Yi Qianxian didn't seem to see this at all. He looked deeply into Luo Qingtong's eyes. Chapter 128. Whoosh. He lifted his hand and grabbed Luo Qingtong's chin, pulling her closer to him. At the same time he used his other hand to rub the corner of her eye. Following his movements, the light in his eyes flowed freely and naturally. It wasn't her. Xianxia was disappointed. He was already sure that the evil doctor was that woman in disguise. But now, the other party was obviously a teenager and her eyes were intact. Xianxia let go of his hand. At this moment Luo Qingtong grabbed him. Wait. My lord, you haven't answered my question. Let go. Xianxia's gaze was cold. After confirming that the person in front of him wasn't that woman, his last bit of patience was gone. If she wasn't that woman, she didn't have the right to waste his time. But how could Luo Qingtong let him off so easily? What the f***ck? This man was always suspicious of this and that. She was so scared that she was about to have a heart attack. If she hadn't been quick-witted and suddenly remembered that Tian Mingzi had left a trace of power in her eyes to heal them temporarily, she would have been caught. It would be strange if she let him off so easily. My lord. Luo Qingtong grabbed Xianxia's sleeve so tightly that she almost tied a knot. You've been paying so much attention to me, she said shyly. Is it because you admire me? Instantly Xianxia paused in his action of shaking her off. Outside, Bei Qing and the others who were rushing over to report also stopped abruptly. Oh my god. What did they just hear? The group of people looked at each other in shock. Then they stood there with their eyes lowered and their noses lowered, not daring to move forward anymore. They were afraid that they would hear something terrible again. After all, there was only their master and the evil doctor in the main hall. Luo Qingtong also heard the commotion outside at this moment. She rolled her eyes and before Xianxia could say anything she shouted, "You're so annoying. My lord, don't be embarrassed to admit it. I know you adore me. Otherwise, why did you sneak into my bathroom in the middle of the night? Just a moment ago she kept telling me to take off my clothes. It's so embarrassing." Luo Qingtong was using her old and hoarse voice. Besides, other than Xianxia, no one else knew that she wasn't an old man. She was going to go all out. See if you can disgust him to death. Bei Qing and the others outside were completely stunned by the shocking content. Master was really a homosexual. The one who broke it was actually that old evil doctor. Wait a minute, it was Master who wanted to do something to Xie first. Their hearts were filled with thoughts, but they tried their best to remain calm on the surface. Only they knew how turbulent their hearts were right now. Especially the black field castellan who was standing behind Bei Qing's wind feather, was even more shocked. So this was the reason why the Lord urgently invited Xie into the manor. No wonder the Lord never let any beauties get close to him. So it was because he had such a strange hobby. Just as everyone couldn't help but fill in the blanks, Xianxia, who had been shocked by Luo Qingtong's bold words, finally reacted. How dare you? Before he could finish speaking, Luo Qingtong had already rushed out in a flash. As she rushed out, she covered her face and wept. I know. My lord, you adore me. But after thinking about it, I still think that I prefer to be the one on top. Chapter 129. As Luo Qingtong spoke, she flew out of the hall with a leap. Damn you. If you pester me again, it means you want to be the next one. Let's see if you dare to provoke me again. Luo Qingtong ground her teeth as she quickly disappeared in front of everyone. Everyone watched this scene with their mouths wide open. Before they could react, Luo Qingtong's figure had disappeared without a trace. "My lord, if you change your mind you can come and find me," Luo Qingtong's reluctant old voice sounded in the air. When everyone heard this they felt goosebumps all over their bodies. At this moment there was a loud bang. In the next second, the most magnificent building in the city lord's residence was smashed into a pile of gravel. Xianxia walked out step by step carrying a huge oppressive aura. Even Bei Qing and Feng Yu, who had been by Xianxia's side all year round, were intimidated by the oppressive aura around him and took a few steps back. The two of them lowered their heads and didn't dare to breathe loudly, afraid that they would offend Xianxia. His master usually wouldn't vent his anger on others. But now, he was in an unusual situation. Only the city lord of Blackfield's city lord came forward with a bitter face and trembling with fear. "My lord, there's news from the main city of the Tianyu Empire." He wiped his sweat, hoping that this news would appease his lord's anger. That demonic doctor was too bold. She dared to reject the lord. But the lord's hobbies were too strange. Of all things to like, she just had to like. Should he treat the evil doctor better or worse in the future? The city lord of Blackfield's city lord looked distressed. His forehead was full of sweat, but he didn't dare to wipe it off. "Give it to me." Hearing his words, Xianxia moved a little. The oppressive aura around him was also slightly restrained. The news from the Tianyu Empire must be about that woman, which was worth their special report. Thinking of that woman, Xianxia could not help but think of the evil doctor. Thinking of what the other party had just said, he couldn't help but pull back his hand, almost crushing the letter that the Blackfield city lord handed over to him. He took a deep breath, opened the seal and took out the letter. "You found it?" He looked at the content indifferently. "According to the news from the Tianyu Empire, they seem to have found a girl who is very similar to your description. But whether she is the one you are looking for, we have to wait for you to confirm." The mayor of Blackfield wiped the sweat off his forehead and reported. "That girl has been taken away by the Tianyu Empire branch. She's being taken good care of. We're just waiting for you to identify her." Xianxia crushed the letter in his hand. The description of the young girl's situation was indeed somewhat similar to what he had described. But he didn't know whether she was the woman he was looking for. If she was, then he could put the evil doctor aside for the time being. Thinking of Luo Qingtong, the veins on Xianxia's forehead couldn't help but bulge. "Go and get ready. We'll leave the city tomorrow," he said in a low voice. Since he had found the girl, there was no need to stay here any longer. And he didn't want to see that evil doctor again. "Yes." Bei Qing and the others answered and left. Chapter 130. AI. So annoying. She squatted outside a secluded courtyard, looking at the magnificent city lord's mansion in front of her with a gloomy face. Her heart was indescribably tangled. What do you think this is? She had been too excited just now and forgot that she still needed to get the heaven heart green jade fruit from the city lord's mansion. She thought that Mingzun had come to find her to refine medicine so she could find a way to get the heaven heart green jade fruit. In the end, that guy came to find trouble with her. She finally got away, but she didn't get the heaven heart green jade fruit. If it was any other herb, no matter how precious it was, Luo Qingtong wouldn't take the risk to come back. But this heaven heart green jade fruit was the antidote to the poison in her eyes, so it was very hard to get. Seeing that she had only gotten a heaven and earth dragon soul grass after so many days in the Blackfield, and it was given by that strange old man, she knew how hard it was to get the antidote to the poison. Damn it, don't let her know who was the one behind the original owner's back, poisoning her eyes. Otherwise she wouldn't let her go. She had to let her taste the torture that was 100 times more painful than gouging out her eyes. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong fiercely gritted her teeth, then stood up and said righteously, "Okay, go. Isn't it just a man? I don't believe it. The city lord's mansion is so big, how can I meet him so coincidentally? It's just a herb, I'll think of a way to get it and leave. I don't believe I can meet that man again." Luo Qingtong thought and made up her mind. She took off the disguise on her body and stuffed it into the bushes at the side, then she jumped into the city lord's mansion. As the core of the Blackfield, the city lord's mansion was naturally heavily guarded. However, Luo Qingtong's eye technique allowed her to smoothly avoid all kinds of patrolling arrangements. Plus, she immediately knocked out a servant after entering, so she passed through all kinds of sentries without any danger. The people in the city lord's mansion probably didn't expect that there would be someone who dared to sneak into the city lord's mansion without being discovered. Therefore, Luo Qingtong was able to enter the inner courtyard without any obstructions. She remembered that the album was a gift from the people below to Mingzun. The heaven heart green jade fruit should be kept in the storehouse of the city lord mansion, waiting for Mingzun to use it when he wanted. He didn't want to throw it away like that. In any case, that lord didn't lack treasures. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong felt more at ease. It was good that he didn't lack treasures. If she didn't lack it, no one would care even if she took it away. Luo Qingtong didn't want to meet that man again. She had already used up all her trump cards after 2 consecutive suspicions. If he did it again, she would really be exposed. Luo Qingtong easily found her way to the warehouse. At this point, she was in a difficult position. Not for other reasons, but the medicinal storehouse of the city lord's mansion was an important place, and there were experts guarding it everywhere. No matter how powerful Luo Qingtong's dou technique was, she couldn't turn herself into a mosquito and fly in. She didn't know where to start with this kind of guarding method. Luo Qingtong frowned and squatted on the tree for a long time, but she still couldn't think of a good idea. At this moment, she suddenly heard someone's voice. "Little Six, are you going to get the medicine for Lord?" Yes. Outside, 2 young men dressed as servants were greeting each other. Chapter 131. I really envy you, Little Six, to be able to serve the Lord. It's said that he's like a celestial being. The manservant who called Little Six said with a face full of envy. It's all right. The manservant called Little Six also had a face full of pride. The Lord is actually very approachable and easy to get along with. The main thing is that his face is really as beautiful as a celestial being. It makes people forget everything when they see it. He said with a face full of worship and respect. Luo Qingtong, who was hiding in the tree, almost fell down when she heard this. Approachable and easy to get along with? Luo Qingtong thought of the few times she saw Yi Qianxian's icy face and suspected that there was something wrong with the manservant's eyes. Otherwise, it would be nonsense. How could that man have anything to do with the words approachable and easy to get along with? This was simply the biggest joke in the world. If he was considered approachable and easy to get along with, then her evil Dr. Ghost Eye would be the reincarnation of Maitreya Buddha. And what the hell was that beautiful celestial being? Luo Qingtong couldn't help but want to laugh when she heard this. She was sure that this manservant had never seen Yi Qianxian before. He had never even served him before. Otherwise, how could he say such things? She patiently squatted on the treetop and listened to the 2 manservants talk and flatter each other. After a while, the manservant named Little Six left with a satisfied expression on his face. Luo Qingtong quietly followed behind him. When he turned a corner, she suddenly appeared behind him and patted him on the shoulder. This is Brother Little Six. Luo Qingtong, dressed up as a manservant, was very delicate and pretty. She smiled at Little Six with a face full of harmlessness. I just heard you and that big brother chatting over there. Brother Little Six is very powerful. You can actually serve the Lord. I wonder if the Lord is scary? Luo Qingtong had already figured out the manservant called Little Six's personality. He liked to listen to people's praises. So the more she boasted, the less suspicious the other party would be and the easier it would be to get information. Sure enough, as soon as the other party heard this, he happily told her about it. He was nothing more than a High Lord. He wasn't scary at all. The High Lord treated him very well. If Luo Qingtong hadn't dealt with Yi Qianxian before, she would have thought that he was telling the truth. While she flattered him, she discreetly inquired about what medicine he was here for. After getting all the information she needed, Luo Qingtong gave him an enchanting smile and knocked him out. When the manservant fainted, his face was still full of shock. He didn't know how Luo Qingtong's temperament and appearance changed so much in an instant. After dealing with the manservant, Luo Qingtong directly took off the manservant's clothes and put them on herself. At the same time, she disguised herself as the manservant and swaggered towards the medicine storehouse. Who is it? Before she could get close to the storehouse, she was stopped by someone. I'm here to get the medicine for the Lord. Luo Qingtong straightened her body. That little six didn't have any token on him. Luo Qingtong guessed that the person in charge of the medicine storehouse probably knew him. So she deliberately straightened her back to let the other party see her clearly. At this time, if there was even the slightest bit of guilty conscience, he would be suspected. Sure enough, that person sized him up and then directly waved his hand to let him pass. Luo Qingtong entered the medicine storehouse and reported the medicinal herbs she got from Little Six one by one. At the end, she also added the Heaven's Heart Green Jade Fruit. Heaven's Heart Green Jade Fruit. Chapter 132. Luo Qingtong's heart skipped a beat. Just then she heard the man ask, "Did Lord say why he wanted the Heaven's Heart Jasper fruit? There are a few medicinal properties that don't match with the ones that Lord asked for." The man said, "If they are mixed together, something bad will happen." Luo Qingtong heaved a sigh of relief. Of course, she knew about this and had already found a reason. "I don't know about this. Perhaps Lord suddenly had a whim and wanted this medicinal herb. I don't necessarily need to use medicine. However, I will definitely tell the Great Lord about Senior's reminder when I meet him later. I will let him know of your sincerity." Luo Qingtong smiled. The man in charge of sorting the medicinal herbs felt at ease and nodded in satisfaction. He took the Heaven's Heart Jasper fruit from the shelf and handed it to Luo Qingtong, saying, "Good. You rascal, we haven't seen each other for a day and you're already so good at talking. Alright, take this medicinal herb. Remember to tell Lord that it can't be mixed together." "Okay." Luo Qingtong smiled and took the Heaven's Heart Jasper fruit. She placed it on the medicine tray and carried the pile of medicinal herbs out. After leaving the medicine storehouse, she walked all the way out. Just as she reached a secluded place and was about to leave with the medicinal herbs in her hands, a figure suddenly walked towards her. "What are you doing here?" The person saw Little Six and frowned. He walked up and asked rudely. Luo Qingtong was about to leave when she paused. She was just thinking about how to get rid of the other party when her lips twitched when she saw the other party's face clearly. Damn it! The person who came was none other than Bei Qing. He happened to be on his way here and didn't pay much attention to Luo Qingtong when he saw her. But when he recognized that she was the manservant who brought the medicinal herbs for his master, he immediately frowned and followed her. This was because the direction Luo Qingtong was walking in wasn't the direction of Yi Qianxian's residence. Luo Qingtong also recognized him as Yi Qianxian's personal bodyguard. She calculated in her heart and knew that if her identity was exposed in the city lord's mansion, she really wouldn't be able to get out. She immediately pretended to be frightened and said, I need to pee." As she spoke, her face turned red and she immediately lowered her head, not giving Bei Qing a chance to probe further. At this time, Luo Qingtong was very glad that she had thought of taking the medicine away. If she had abandoned the medicine tray and left with only the Heaven's Will Green Jade fruit, she would have been exposed under Bei Qing's watchful eyes. How could this master and servant be so alike? Both of them were voyeurs. "Need to pee." Luo Qingtong's words made Bei Qing stop in his tracks. Before he could react, Luo Qingtong had already lowered her head and apologized in fear as she hurriedly walked out. "So sorry. I'll go deliver the medicine to the Lord right now." Luo Qingtong's performance was impeccable. Bei Qing frowned as he watched her leave. He thought for a while and then followed her secretly. Due to his sharp intuition as a bodyguard, he felt that something was wrong. Sensing that Bei Qing was secretly following her, Luo Qingtong cursed in her heart. She had originally wanted to find another opportunity to leave after she got rid of Bei Qing. She didn't expect to be targeted. That man was difficult to deal with, but the people around him were also difficult to deal with. What the hell? Luo Qingtong's lips twitched. Chapter 133. In the main hall there was a burst of steam. Luo Qingtong stood outside the main hall with a tray of herbs in her hands. She couldn't take a step out of the main hall. Who could tell her what the hell was going on? Why was that man in the bath hall? Did he ask for a bunch of herbs just to soak himself in a bath? Luo Qingtong felt an indescribable pain in her balls. The picture of a handsome man bathing was very beautiful, but the problem was that this man wasn't that good looking. What if she was recognized? Luo Qingtong felt a wave of annoyance as she thought about it. Especially when she thought about her first encounter with Yi Qianxian, She felt that not only was her balls hurting, but her stomach was also hurting. Just as she was about to leave the herbs at the door and leave, the man's cold and deep voice sounded from inside. "Come in." It was obvious that the man had sensed her arrival. Luo Qingtong braced herself and walked in with the tray of herbs. She had already kept the heaven's heart-green jade fruit. If it weren't for Bei Qing causing trouble, she would have run away long ago. She hoped that this man would let her leave after putting the herbs in. Then everything would be fine. As Luo Qingtong thought about it, she carefully carried the tray of herbs and walked into the bath hall. "Lord, here are the herbs you asked for. Pour them in." The man sat in the middle of the huge bath without moving. 36 gigantic dragon heads were spitting out water from their mouths, making the bath palace look like a paradise on earth. The man's figure was hidden in the hazy mist, flickering in and out of existence. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't see him clearly. Luo Qingtong only raised her head to take a look before quickly lowering it. This man was really a one-of-a-kind evildoer. Even if he was half-naked, he was still irresistible. Luo Qingtong tried hard to control her eyes from wandering around. She was a servant. She definitely couldn't attract this man's attention. In front of Yi Qianxian, Luo Qingtong's every move was very careful. She gave full play to her acting skills from both her previous and current lives. She lowered her head and carried the medicine tray to the edge of the bathtub. Then she poured the herbs into the bathtub in an orderly manner. Regardless of whether it was his actions or his expression, they were all meticulous. The man in the bathtub did not raise his head to look at her. From beginning to end, his eyes were tightly shut. Luo Qingtong could vaguely see that Yi Qianxian seemed to be soaking in some kind of medicinal liquid from the rising steam. The medicine this time was different from the one she saw at the Nine Magi Mountain. It should be another prescription. Luo Qingtong's curiosity rose as she thought about it. She didn't know what kind of injury the man had. Why was it so strange? With his strength and status, he actually couldn't find an alchemist who could heal his internal injuries? As Luo Qingtong thought about it, she was slightly distracted. At this moment, there was a sudden movement in the bathtub. Luo Qingtong raised her head and instantly saw a naked man. He was really naked. There was no cover at all. She stared blankly at the man in the middle of the bathtub as he stood up. That slim waist and narrow buttocks, strong and powerful body full of masculine charm and hormones, was completely exposed in front of her. The huge thing below was also incomparably clear. Plop. Chapter 134. Fush. The sound was simply too loud. Yi Qianxian turned his head and looked over. Seeing Luo Qingtong fall into the water, his brows furrowed. He instantly appeared beside her and grabbed her. At the same time, Luo Qingtong reacted the moment she fell into the water. *CK, this is going to cause trouble. Thinking about how she had tried so hard not to attract this man's attention, but had failed because she fell into the water, her face instantly turned bitter. Ba, I hope that man doesn't notice me. I'm such a fool. Isn't it just a man's naked body? It's not like I haven't seen it before. What's there to be shocked about? As Luo Qingtong thought about it, she raised her hand to grab the edge of the bathtub. At this moment, a figure appeared beside her. Then a strong and powerful arm suddenly grabbed her and lifted her up. However, that figure was stuck between Luo Qingtong and the edge of the bathtub. Luo Qingtong watched helplessly as her hand grabbed a certain part of the man's body. Oh. Fush. The moment she was lifted out of the water, a man's painful groan suddenly came from above her head. Feeling the warmth and length of the object in her hand, Luo Qingtong released her hand as if she had been electrocuted. My lord, I can explain. She felt her scalp go numb as she raised her head. She met the man's pair of cold eyes due to his pain and anger. At this moment, his eyes were already red. My lord, this is really just an accident. Luo Qingtong tried her best to save herself. At this moment, she could only pray that Yi Qianxian was kind enough to not blame a pitiful and ignorant servant like her. Otherwise, she would have to expose her identity. However, her eyes were clear now. She was fine. Now that she was exposed, the suspicion of the evil doctor that she had previously cleared would definitely follow. God, do you have to play with me like this? Yi Qianxian looked coldly at the trembling servant in front of him. Although he was extremely angry, he didn't have the energy to deal with her. Fram. He suddenly raised his hand and flung Luo Qingtong away. Bam. Luo Qingtong's body somersaulted a few times in the air before she could stand firmly on the ground. At this moment she was already at the entrance of the inner hall, a few meters away from the bathtub. Did I escape? This man actually didn't make a move? Luo Qingtong heaved a sigh of relief, touched her heart that was beating rapidly in her chest, and hurriedly wanted to run out. Of course it was for the best. Anyway, she had the medicine. Let's get out of here. However, just as she was about to leave, she turned around to take a look. She was shocked by what she saw. The man fainted at the edge of the bathtub and blood started to seep out of his body. The blood flowed into the bath and was dissolved by the medicinal bath's aura. The red and white colors created a charming, enchanting, and shocking scene. It can't be. This man. His injury acted up again. Thinking of the scene when Xianxia had just stood up, Luo Qingtong's heart flashed with a trace of understanding. Could it be that he had already felt something was wrong with his body at that time? That's why he got up and wanted to leave. He was only stopped by her falling into the water for a moment. Then she grabbed his vital part. He couldn't control the aura in his body and exploded. Luo Qingtong's lips twitched as she thought of this. What kind of F***king ill-fated relationship is this? Chapter 135. I really owe it to you, she muttered in her heart as she dragged the man out of the pool. Yi Qianren's body was still bleeding even after she left the bathtub. It was still the same unscathed scene that Luo Qingtong had seen before. Seeing this scene, Luo Qingtong muttered angrily in her heart and raised her hand to grab the man's wrist. At this moment, her gaze accidentally landed on something on the man's lower body. Luo Qingtong's lips twitched violently and she turned around with her eyes closed. She wasn't shy. That thing was too big. It kept occupying her attention. Can't you let me treat him properly? She glared fiercely at the man's handsome face in front of her and washed her eyes with her beautiful face. Luo Qingtong calmed herself down and used her eye technique to transfer her energy into the man's body. It was the same as the man she met at Nine Magi Mountain. More than half of his meridians were ruptured and it seemed to be getting worse. Luo Qingtong frowned and discovered that nearly half of the man's meridians had not been repaired. They were still the same old injuries as before. What was going on? Wasn't the healing medicine that he was soaking in previously specially used to repair meridians? Why weren't these old injuries healed? Luo Qingtong frowned and didn't have time to think. She hurriedly repaired the man's broken main meridians. She only complained as she repaired them. This man was so valiant that he didn't treat himself as a human. These main meridians were actually forcefully ruptured by the medicine's power. So he soaked in the pool for half a day just to rupture his main meridians. How could he not think things through? That's why he was torturing himself like this. Luo Qingtong didn't know what to say. She used all her energy to repair Yi Qianxian's meridians while using her eye technique to inspect his body. She wanted to find the reason why his meridians ruptured so easily. Luo Qingtong had seen the medicine that he was soaking in earlier. The medicine's power wasn't strong. With this man's strength, his meridians shouldn't be ruptured by this little bit of medicine. What else did he do? Furthermore, the stronger a martial cultivator was, the stronger their body would be. Even soul cultivators, when their psychic power reached a certain peak, would strengthen their bodies. How could this man's meridians be so weak? Luo Qingtong furrowed her brows and searched his body. For a heaven-defying eye technique master like her, there were very few things in the world that she couldn't see through. If there was, she would do everything she could to find the reason. This could be considered a unique hobby of Luo Qingtong. In her previous life, Luo Qingtong, Yi Qianren was very powerful and Luo Qingtong would not provoke him normally. But now that he was unconscious, she naturally wouldn't let go of this opportunity. If it wasn't for this man's insistence on holding on to her, she would have used her identity as an evil doctor to treat his injuries and study his strange injuries. TSK. Xianxia's fine. How could his meridians rupture for no reason? Luo Qingtong checked Yi Qianxian's body from top to bottom. He even checked every single blood vessel. She just didn't know how such a strange thing could happen to his body. His meridians were as thin as paper, as if they would naturally rupture with a light touch. If it wasn't for this man's valiant strength, he would have been a cripple by now. Here came the problem. Chapter 136. Luo Qingtong couldn't figure it out. Most people wouldn't think about it if they couldn't figure it out. But Luo Qingtong wasn't the same. There weren't many things in this world that she couldn't figure out. She could even cure a legendary disease like the soul detachment illness. There was no reason for her to stumble in front of this man's strange injury. She frowned and continued to investigate the man's body. There must be a reason. There shouldn't be anything in this world that she couldn't see through. Just like this, Luo Qingtong's power cycled through Xianxia's body again and again. Every cycle brought back a bit of the man's power. By the time she discovered that something was wrong with her body, and her meridians were in so much pain that they felt like they were about to explode, the accumulation of power in her body had already reached a peak. Fuck. Is this man really a perfect tonic pill? Luo Qingtong looked at the power in her body that was stuffed to the brim with shock. Although the man's aura could only be brought back a bit each cycle, this was incomparably powerful to Luo Qingtong. Previously she had only repaired his main meridians, and her strength had rapidly increased to the 9th stage of the martial master realm. At this time, Luo Qingtong was immersed in investigating Xianxia's injury. Unknowingly, the aura in her body had already soared to the 9th stage of the martial general realm. Not only that, but her strength was also constantly increasing, wanting to break through to the martial general realm. At the same time, Luo Qingtong's spiritual power had also merged with the man's aura and increased to the level of a 9-star spirit master. No. She couldn't let her strength increase any further. Luo Qingtong subconsciously suppressed the power in her body, not allowing it to increase any further. Her jump from the martial master realm to the 9th stage of the martial general realm was already very shocking. If it increased any further, her body's foundation wouldn't be able to keep up with the growth of her strength. This was the reason why Luo Qingtong's meridians were tingling with pain at this moment. If this continued, even if she increased her strength, her weak foundation would cause her strength to be lower than those of the same level. More importantly, this F*King improvement was too fast and too exciting. Luo Qingtong had only been away from the Luo family for a little more than a month, but her strength had soared from the initial stage of martial master to the great martial general realm or even higher. Wasn't this a F*King trap? The effects of the 9 Magi Mountains mutation were still lingering. According to the information that Luo Qingtong had obtained from the Black Field, the Empire of Qin had sent people to investigate Jiaowu Mountain. At this time her strength had increased so quickly. Wasn't this telling others that this person might have obtained the inheritance of the celestial sect of the 9 Shamans Mountain? Thinking of the benefits and troubles left by the Immortal Slayer Palace, Luo Qingtong had a headache and held her forehead. She hastily suppressed the aura in her body. However, even if she could suppress the aura in her body, she couldn't suppress the aura of that man. What the F*ck? Husky. Luo Qingtong endured the pain of the energy in her body crashing left and right. She turned back to look at Yi Qianren. Most of his meridians had been repaired, there shouldn't be any problems. The rest was up to him. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong jumped up and rushed out of the bathroom. Her body was trembling slightly from the pain. Although she stumbled as she rushed out of the bathroom, it looked like she had been scolded and rushed out in a hurry. Chapter 137. Swish. Swish. Luo Qingtong bit her lips and ran as fast as she could as soon as she got out of the city lord's mansion. She wanted to vent her power. Not long after she left, Bei Qing and the others realized that something was wrong and rushed into the bathroom. Master. Bei Qing and the others were shocked when they saw Yi Qianxian lying on the ground. Quick. Prepare the heavenly flying boat. Bring Master back to the main city immediately. Bei Qing said without hesitation when she saw Yi Qianxian's bleeding body. Feng Yu carried Yi Qianxian on his back. Everyone rushed out of the city lord's mansion. Not long after, the huge and beautiful flying boat rose into the sky. Many people looked at this scene in surprise. They didn't know why Mingzun suddenly left the Blackfield subcity. In the mountains, Luo Qingtong's figure swept up a gust of wind and swept forward. Her destination was the place that Chu Lingfeng mentioned before, the place where his mother had an accident when she was picking herbs. It was also the place where the 1,000-year soul guiding wood was. Bang! 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 Luo Qingtong's figure swept into the dense forest. Countless trees and grass were cut into pieces by the sharp wind that swept up by her body. The girl's figure was extremely fast. Almost every place she landed was the most suitable place for her to sweep away. In just a moment she had swept forward for nearly a few thousand meters. At this moment, the pair of eyes with distinct black and white had returned to being empty and black because of the time limit of Tianmingzi's power had run out. Wisps of bloody light flickered and jumped from her eyes, making the girl look like a Shura goddess from hell. The flower of dark prison. Bang! 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 Many demonic beasts in the forest were slaughtered before they could see Luo Qingtong's figure clearly. At the same time, Luo Qingtong jumped to the top of the tree and roared towards the sky with a deafening roar. The bloody light in her eyes became more and more obvious. Kill! The power in Luo Qingtong's body was restless. In order to prevent him from breaking through, she had placed a spiritual suggestion on him, making him unable to break through to the next realm. If one's cultivation level did not increase, one's strength would not be able to be released. The only way to do that was to release the energy that had nowhere to go in her body through external forces. However, with so much power, especially the power of a man, that allowed her to break through without any hindrance, it was too much of a pity to disperse it just like that. Luo Qingtong could only try her best to find the location of the Millennium Soul Guiding Wood. With that thing she would be able to seal the power in her body as much as possible. In the future he would wait for the right opportunity to use it. Swish swish swish. Luo Qingtong's figure flashed through the mountains. Chu Lingfeng wasn't very detailed. If they wanted to find the Millennium Soul Guiding Wood, they had to rely on Luo Qingtong herself. However, she had her eye technique. As long as she followed the path with the densest yin qi, she would be able to find the 1,000-year soul guiding wood. Swish. After searching for a period of time, Luo Qingtong finally found the 1,000-year soul guiding wood when the power in her body couldn't bear it anymore. The huge crown of the tree covered the sky and the sun. This black 1,000-year soul guiding wood was like a monster standing in the depths of the mountains. Its whole body emitted a terrible evil aura. Around it, countless evil spirits were waving their fangs and brandishing their claws. Along with the swaying leaves and branches of the 1,000-year soul guiding wood, they felt Luo Qingtong's living aura and silently roared at her with their mouths wide open. At the same time, bursts of soul-sucking aura were emitted from the 1,000-year soul guiding wood. Interesting, it actually has spiritual intelligence. Feeling that those evil spirits were controlled by the 1,000-year soul guiding wood and didn't rush up, Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows. The blood-red light in her eyes was full of interest. No wonder Chu Lingfeng's mother could come back alive after encountering such a scene. Chapter 138. Swish. Luo Qingtong's figure appeared within the alluring range of the 1,000-year soul guiding wood. Luo Qingtong restrained the bloody light in her eyes and the restless power in her body. With a wooden face, she pretended to be tempted by the 1,000-year soul guiding wood and walked towards its center step by step. This 1,000-year soul guiding wood had already matured. Demonic plants with spiritual awakening were extremely ferocious. In particular, this 1,000-year soul guiding wood had no one to guide it at the beginning of its spiritual awakening. It had already started killing, and its ferocious aura was even stronger. Once it started killing, it meant that it was almost impossible for this 1,000-year soul guiding wood to pass the transformation tribulation. The heavens would not allow such a murderous demonic plant to pass the transformation tribulation. Unless someone helped it, this 1,000-year soul guiding wood could only stop here for the rest of its life. Unfortunately, there were many demonic beasts and demonic plants in this world that were unable to awaken their spiritual awakening. Even if they grew for tens of millions of years, they still could not transcend. And this 1,000-year soul guiding wood was only 1,000 years old, and it already had such an opportunity. But because it took the wrong path, it was cut off from the opportunity. However, this had nothing to do with Luo Qingtong. She walked forward step by step under the allure of the 1,000-year soul guiding wood. As she approached, the surrounding ghosts were restless. Sensing Luo Qingtong's aura as a living person, they wanted to pounce on her all the time, but they were restrained by the 1,000-year soul guiding wood and could not move. They could only open their mouths and roar invisibly. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Luo Qingtong was getting closer and closer under the alluring effect of the thousand-year soul guiding wood. Just as she walked under the heart of the thousand-year soul guiding wood, the trunk of the thousand-year soul guiding wood suddenly opened, revealing a trunk full of sharp teeth. It was stained with blood and there were still pieces of flesh and bones hanging on it. In the heart of the tree one could still see the dense white bones inside. Now is the time. The bloody light in Luo Qingtong's eyes suddenly flashed. In an instant she broke free from the alluring power of the thousand-year soul guiding wood. To her, the soul-sucking ability of this thousand-year-old soul guiding wood was not as powerful as her eye technique. In her previous life, when Luo Qing's pupils were at their peak, the moment she used her pupil technique, even those who wanted to kill her would be controlled by her pupil technique as long as their willpower was not firm enough. What was the soul-sucking power of this thousand-year-old soul guiding wood? Boom! Luo Qingtong avoided the mouth of the thousand-year soul guiding wood and went straight for the thousand-year tree core in its trunk. This was the essence of the thousand-year soul guiding wood. With this tree core, the 1,000-year soul guiding wood was truly a 1,000-year soul guiding wood. Only its tree trunk had the power to guide souls. That was why there were so many miraculous things. What Luo Qingtong needed to do now was to take out the tree core. With this tree core, Luo Qingtong could easily obtain another millennium soul guiding wood in the future. Moreover, it was much cleaner than this one. She found the power of the thousand-year-old soul guiding wood to be dirty. Screech. The thousand-year soul guiding wood didn't expect Luo Qingtong to be able to break free from its soul-sucking power. In an instant it let out a sharp cry. That huge tree trunk's mouth quickly closed, wanting to wrap the tree core back into it. At the same time, the leaves and branches around it suddenly gathered together and turned into sharp blades, cutting towards Luo Qingtong. The surrounding malicious spirits were also released. They screamed and pounced towards Luo Qingtong. Bursts of chilly wind assailed her nostrils, and the smell of blood assaulted her face. Luo Qingtong's expression didn't change. Chapter 139. Boom. The suppressed aura in Luo Qingtong's body suddenly erupted. The man's aura that entered her body was too strong. Even if only a trace of it was left each time, it was enough to make Luo Qingtong's body explode. If she was willing to advance, it wouldn't matter. This power would only help her. However, Luo Qingtong was unwilling to advance, so this power in her body became a disaster. At this moment, this power was completely released by her. Rumble. Cyclones suddenly exploded around Luo Qingtong's body. The power that rushed out of her body suddenly formed a strong and powerful vortex aura, stirring up the air around her, forming a scene like a tornado. All the leaves and branches that rushed out from the thousand-year soul guiding wood like sharp blades were all twisted into pieces by this sudden burst of tyrannical power. At the same time, Luo Qingtong also drew out the life and death sword that suddenly appeared in her hand. The power of the death blade was quickly activated. Almost instantly the black death qi filled the air. The black death qi that was heavier than the yin qi suddenly turned into a scythe of the death god under Luo Qingtong's wave, sweeping through the air. Puff, puff. The sharp screams of the ghosts that rushed over were all turned into green smoke under this attack, dissipating between heaven and earth. The life blade replenished and the death blade harvested. When the life and death sword that carried the profound meaning of life and death transformed into the death blade, it was the most feared weapon of these ghosts. These ghosts were controlled by the Millennium Soul Guiding Wood and were drawn out of the souls of living people. They were immortal in this world, neither souls nor ghosts. In this special state, ordinary young treasures couldn't do anything to them. Just by looking at how they could appear in the daytime, one could know how difficult they were to deal with. However, when the life and death sword in Luo Qingtong's hand transformed into the death blade, it was the nemesis of all dead things in the world. These ghosts weren't afraid of sunlight or yang treasures, but they couldn't not be afraid of Luo Qingtong's death blade. Ah! Shrill screams could be heard in the air. Wherever Luo Qingtong's death blade passed, the Yin spirits would shriek and be cut into wisps of green smoke, disappearing from this world. These evil spirits were the most important life-saving means of the thousand-year-old soul guiding wood. By relying on these spirits, it had killed countless powerhouses who wanted to seize its thousand-year tree core. But at this moment, the method it relied on to save its life was under Luo Qingtong's death blade. Under the tyrannical power that burst forth from the young girl's body, it suddenly shattered. Screech. The thousand-year soul guiding wood shrieked. Its trunk kept squirming, trying to move the thousand-year tree heart away. However, it was too late. Luo Qingtong grabbed the tree heart hanging high in the air and gave it a hard tug. In the next second, the thousand-year soul guiding would let out an incomparably mournful cry. The moment the tree heart left its body, the entire huge thousand-year soul guiding would withered in an instant. As for the Yin spirits that were imprisoned around it, they were all reduced to ashes in an instant amidst shrill screams. The thousand-year soul guiding wood was dead. The spirits were all turned into ashes. Those evil spirits could be considered to have been freed. Chapter 140. Senior brother, look. Someone in the team raised his hand and pointed forward. Yuanmo raised his head and his eyes instantly froze. In front of him, green smoke rose, mixed with countless gray qi and quickly spread from the sky. The dense yin qi instantly caused his pupils to shrink. It's the thousand-year soul guiding wood. Let's go. Yuanmo came for the thousand-year soul guiding wood. This time he was ordered by his teacher to walk outside. Among the tasks he received, there was a requirement to obtain the heart of the thousand-year soul guiding wood. This was also his last task in the outside world. After obtaining the heart of the thousand-year soul guiding wood, he could complete the task perfectly and return to the Saint Academy. Otherwise, he wouldn't have stayed in this Blackfield subsidy after being humiliated by Luo Qingtong. For Yuanmo, this Blackfield subsidy and Luo Qingtong were his most unbearable memories. However, he had just received news from a chamber of commerce that there might be a thousand-year soul guiding wood here. Would there be a mistake? Thinking of this, Yuanmo quickly rushed forward. He was so fast that the freshmen of the Saint Academy behind him had to use all their strength to keep up with him. If it weren't for his junior sister in the team and the fact that she might encounter danger in this mountain range, Yuanmo would have already left them behind and left by himself. When they arrived at the location of the thousand-year soul guiding wood, Luo Qingtong had just put away the life and death yin-yang sword and was about to leave with the heart of the thousand-year soul guiding wood. Noticing that someone was quickly approaching, Luo Qingtong frowned and quickly tore off her manservant's clothes, wearing only a set of white inner clothes. At the same time she covered her face with a light-colored veil. Luo Qingtong had the Rakshasa mask that she used to disguise herself as the evil doctor, but at this time she wasn't wearing any disguise, so it wasn't suitable for her to use it. She had just finished doing all this when Yuanmo and the others rushed out from the grass. Thousand-year soul guiding wood. How could Yuanmo and the others not know that the heart of the 1,000-year soul guiding wood had already been obtained by the young lady on the other side? Luo Qingtong was wearing a white undergarment. The thin inner garment was of excellent quality, completely outlining the girl's graceful figure. Standing beside the huge pitch-black withered thousand-year soul guiding wood, Luo Qingtong's white inner garment was blown up by the wind, and the veil covering her face was also blown up. The collision of black and white made the girl's figure seem even more ethereal. She was as beautiful as a celestial in a painting. Many of the freshmen of the Sacred Institute were stunned by the scene. The young girl was like a fairy that had walked out from the depths of the mountains, making people unable to bear to disturb her. Especially when she glanced over when she heard the commotion. Her eyebrows swayed and she was as beautiful as a painting. Mississippi, even the anxious Yuanmo felt suffocated the moment he saw Luo Qingtong. In his life he had never seen such a quick-witted and beautiful girl. Luo Qingtong stood in the deep and gloomy shadow of the 1,000-year soul guiding wood, but she was like a huge luminous body, attracting people's attention. Just a glance at her made people feel as if they were about to fall in love with her. There was a kind of beauty in this world. Even if you only peeked at a corner of her silhouette, you would be deeply immersed in her, unable to extricate yourself. Seeing Yuanmo's obviously sluggish expression, a pretty girl in a yellow dress from the Sacred Institute's team suddenly had a touch of jealousy in her eyes, and she suddenly attacked. Pretending to be mysterious, quickly hand over the heart of the 1,000-year tree. That's ours. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.